The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation building series, The Law and You. This is program number 871. Coming to you on Monday the 7th of August 2017. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic Sou-Sou Hands. But before getting into the topic, a few preliminary comments. Firstly, as usual, my condolences go out to all families which have suffered recent bereavements. And I think of the family of Mr. Sou-Sou, who as I speak is being laid to rest at a funeral service. And Mr. Sou-Sou has been one of our nation builders in the private sector mainly, and I do know most of his family, if not all of them. Let me also remind you that the funeral of our cousin, Miss Dolores Campbell, will take place this Sunday coming, the 13th of August, in Barley at the Grace and Truth Hall. And her only child, her daughter, is now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Deepest condolences to you, Kelly. On a happier note, my congratulations go out to two sons of the soil who are celebrating 40 years as priests today. I believe as I speak, and it is now minutes to 4, a service is being held at St. Paul's in Caliacua to honor the Reverend Ulrich Commissioner Jones and the Reverend Everton Weeks. 40 years since they were ordained as priests, and my congratulations to both of these brothers who have served very well and indeed continue to give service to the Anglican flock. Now, let me remind you that next week, Friday, the 18th of August, there will be held an outdoor service by the Freedom Hall Church of God, led by Reverend Dr. Cecil George Riley. And this will be held in Bible. The last time I said it would have been held near to the bridge, but the venue has now been changed to the Bible Hard Court for a number of sound reasons. So the open air service by Dr. Cecil George Riley next week, Friday at 7 o'clock in Bible will be at the Bible Hard Court. All are invited, particularly the congregations of neighboring churches. And he and his team would be going to Spring Village for their meeting on the Wednesday before, Wednesday the 16th of August. I will remind you next week, Monday, DB, of those two engagements. Excuse me. Two more quick matters on which I want to comment before I get into the business of the Sou-Sou. Firstly, this morning I listened to a program on NBC Radio 705 hosted by Brother Desmond Arundel, and the topic was vandalism in schools, and many persons called in and expressed their opinions. what apparently has taken place is that there has been I would say, an outbreak of vandalism, whereby some students, not the majority, and in these things is always the troublesome minority, but those students have taken to deliberately breaking and destroying the furniture, the desks, benches, chairs in some schools. I understand that one such occurrence was captured and was put on social media. Now, you don't have to give the matter a lot of thought to come to the conclusion that that sort of behavior is totally unacceptable. You know, in my days, when I was little going to school, you were so glad to have a place of education that you took care not only of the furniture, but every afternoon in every class you would sing bits of paper, lying on the floor, make the place untidy, pick them up. And every student in that classroom would pick up all litter from the floor and place it in the bin. So that we grew up in a culture of orderliness. The furnitures which happened to have been damaged were damaged wholly by accident. You didn't have cases where students were deliberately damaging school furniture. But we should not be surprised, because quite a lot of the songs, and I try to call in the program to say one thing to Mr. Arundel. And as I didn't get the opportunity, let me take this opportunity to say what I was planning to call in to say. I was planning to ask Mr. Arundel to speak to some of his colleagues at that radio station and to speak to management to see whether they couldn't consider cutting out the many songs on that radio station with lyrics encouraging people to behave bad and to mash up the place. That appears to be the crux of popular culture nowadays. Let we behave bad. Let we mash up the place. So that unsocial behavior is being glorified in song. And you have the government cultural department organizing entertainments, encouraging shows and so on, at which some of the performers carry on with lyrics which are totally against any semblance of a nation-building attitude. So that we have to be careful about what is being inculcated in the minds of the young and impressionable persons in this society, because if we encourage bad behavior, we would get the manifestations of bad behavior. Final preliminary matter. I didn't hear the gist of the controversy, but it has come to my attention that there has been something of a controversy about the non-payment by students who are now working, who are the recipients of student loans. Now, to their credit, government has gone out of their way to organize sources of funding so that disadvantaged students can get money to borrow to finance their higher studies. And really and truly, there are few students you will find who have the applicable qualifications to go and study abroad who cannot manage to get a student loan to go and study. But the point has to be made that if money is put aside for poor people to borrow to educate their children, and it is accepted that education is one of the roots out of poverty, on the not just the understanding but the legal obligation to pay back the loan whenever the student is qualified and has got a job and is working for money, then you cannot justify persons not paying back their student loans as they have legally undertaken to do. So that whatever steps the authorities feel justified in taking in getting these payments from the delinquent students, now delinquent working people, let the authorities go and get the money, because you need those payments to help others who are coming up. To me, certain things are so patently obvious that I don't understand why people debate certain things. I mean, your obligation to pay back a loan is not anything you can debate. I can understand if a person having borrowed money either fails to qualify or qualifies, gets a job and loses the job for reasons beyond themselves. I can understand if somebody starts working having taken out a student loan, having been financed mainly by the student loan. You start to work, perhaps you get married, you have other obligations, and then bam, illness intervenes or some other unforeseen circumstances, you cannot continue paying. But by all means, whenever you face those unforeseen circumstances, go in and speak to the authorities at which the loan is repayable and explain your situation. And if you satisfy them that because of circumstances beyond your control, you either cannot pay at the rate you had contracted to pay, or you have to miss some payments, they would understand. But if you borrow money from a poor people fund, go and get qualified, you come back and get a job, and you are making a salary, expecting with the legal obligation that you will pay back the student loan, how on earth could you expect not to be paying back your student loan so that other students in the future would be able to borrow the same money you are paying back so that they could get a chance when their turn comes. I mean, are we so selfish that we got what we wanted, so we don't care anything about those who are coming up? We can't be. So let the authorities do what they have to do. But those students who are in willful default, come on, pay up. I don't see that they should be a source of controversy. You see, when you undertake a legal obligation and others are dependent on you fulfilling that obligation so that in turn they can get a chance, then you really have to shoulder your responsibilities. But I find in so many areas of life, people want to be wrong and strong. People want to deny their obligations and then fret when they are called upon to accept their responsibilities. Anyway, let's get on to the topic for the evening, Sou-Sou Hands. I would take it that everybody knows what a Sou-Sou is. And if you don't, I wouldn't have the time to sit here and explain to you. But I want to say something about the Sou-Sou scheme. First of all, a Sou-Sou is a perfectly legal arrangement. There's nothing illegal or immoral about a Sou-Sou. And the obligations you undertake when you are joining a scheme are legal obligations. So if you, when your turn comes to pay your dues or make your contribution towards the Sou-Sou, if having collected your hand and the next payday you refuse to pay your contribution, you can be taken to court. And the fact that you would not have signed any agreement doesn't help you, because a Sou-Sou scheme is regarded in law as an informal arrangement whereby people mutually promise to get certain benefits in return for carrying out certain obligations. Quite a lot of workers in a particular employment belong to a Sou-Sou scheme. In fact, some people have more than one hand they throw. But however many Sou-Sou schemes you belong to, your obligation doesn't change. When you get paid, you have to throw your hand. Because the person who is collecting that hand has already made plans for the money. Not only you should throw your hand, but you should throw your hand on time. So if the arrangement is that the monies are to be paid every payday, when the payday comes, don't make an excuse and tell the person who is supposed to get that money, oh, wait till day after tomorrow. No. The time is crucial. The time of payment, of collecting a hand, is crucial to the success of a Sou-Sou scheme. Many of us who are from the poorer classes are the beneficiaries of Sou-Sou Hands, which our parents were involved in. Sometimes that is the only way the poor can make headway. But a Sou-Sou cannot work if everybody doesn't accept their obligations and do what they're supposed to do on time. Because when the time comes for you to get your hand, you want all your money. And then when your contribution comes to be made, you make your contribution week by week if you're weekly paid, fortnight by fortnight if you're fortnightly paid, month by month if you're monthly paid. You make your contributions and you have your calendar because you know when you're supposed to get your hand. And you bank on that. If you're supposed to get your hand a certain date, you could then make arrangements with somebody to pay a bill on that date, or to pay down a piece of land on that date, so that those who are in the Sou-Sou scheme with you shouldn't humbug you by not making the payment on time, so that you could get all your money one time when you get your hand to go and do what you have planned to do with your money. Of course, problems arise every now and then. Somebody, worthless-minded, may collect their hand and unknown to anybody else. They're gone abroad with no intention of sending back the money. There's nothing wrong with being a Sou-Sou, in a Sou-Sou and getting your hand and going abroad if you're going to send back the money when your turn comes to pay, and to pay on the regular basis as legally agreed by all the members of the Sou-Sou scheme. Now, Sou-Sous don't exist just between the poor, you know. There are some well-off people who have a Sou-Sou going, plenty money, because it is such an informal arrangement that the advantages are readily obvious. It is a form of, if you like, compulsory saving, so that when you get your pay, you put aside the equivalent of what hand you're supposed to throw, you throw that. It is as if you took that money and put it in a bank, so that when your turn comes to collect, you collect it, but it doesn't pass through the banking system necessarily. I don't know of many Sou-Sou schemes where people pay by check. Usually it's cash, raw money. Could you imagine somebody bringing a check to you on a Friday night and you have to wait till Monday to go to the bank? Well, I suppose if you are in a scheme where everybody knows everybody and trusts everybody, well, that's okay. But a Sou-Sou is built on trust. It is built on honesty. It is built on reliability. Your word has to be your bond. As I said, people don't normally sign up any document. You don't go to a lawyer's office and sign a Sou-Sou agreement. I know of no such creature. You get together at your workplace and you decide how much each person would contribute, and you have a table of payments. So who will get the first hand, second hand, third hand, fourth hand, fifth hand, and then the Sou-Sou turns around. Clear understanding. But it depends on trust. And the courts will enforce a Sou-Sou arrangement once there is evidence as to what were the terms of that arrangement, and once there is evidence of default by the person or persons who failed to carry out their obligations in the Sou-Sou scheme. And in days gone by, that was one of the informal vehicles not in the mechanical sense, but one of the informal mechanisms by which a lot of poor people got by. Because when they threw their hand, it was a sacrifice they were making, but then the time will come when they will collect. And they will see the benefit of all the contributions, all the hands they threw. So I hope nobody would be in any doubt as to the legality of Sou-Sou Hands, and as to the fact that you can be taken to court for breach of your obligations to the other members of the Sou-Sou scheme. If you want to leave the scheme, you say that to everybody, but you can't leave until you have made all of the payments you are supposed to make. You can't leave a Sou-Sou scheme owing money to somebody who's supposed to collect their hand, depending on you to make your contribution to the hand they're supposed to collect. So you can be taken to court for that. And any magistrate or judge will cry shame at you if it is proven that you willfully breached the terms of what should have been a solemn obligation to pay your contribution when your time came to pay. So I do hope there can be no, and what prompted me to do this topic is that I had to adjudicate in a bit of an informal Sou-Sou dispute, because one member of the arrangement didn't think that is anything you could go to court for. He said, hey, may I sign anything? This can't go to court. Eh? Can't what? It's a legal obligation built on a mutual promise. You promise to pay your hand, and you will get your hand when the time comes, and so on. Everybody makes a promise. And the law upholds promises of that informal kind. Okay? All right, well, that is all for tonight's program number 871. I look forward to being a further service to you next week, Monday DV, for another presentation in this public service nation building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You. A look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You. Presented by lawyer panel R. Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.